how did you get the idea of London's Calling, and how did it even came into your mind that this is something that I want to do?
Quite a few people's minds that they wanted a kind of a countrywide gathering, I suppose.
Bigger companies acquiring smaller companies.
And it's part of their business plan. It is, and I've worked for some of those and done really well out of it.
How were you as a kid, by the way?
Crazy, mental.
Our guest today has an experience of more than 20 years into the IT world, out of which 12 years in the Salesforce itself. He has been a Salesforce MVP since 2012 and is currently a Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame. Correct me if I'm wrong. He has he has got 17 certifications in Salesforce and is currently a Salesforce technical architect. He's also an amazing Salesforce trainer who has trained more than 70,000 people to kickstart their career in Salesforce. That's really amazing, Francis. Not only that, he's also a founder of an amazing Salesforce event which happens in UK known as London's Calling. With that being said, I welcome you on the show, Francis. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Yeah, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's great.
Was I correct with everything?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I'm actually at 80,000 students now, I think. I just probably haven't just updated the website yet.
That's really amazing. I mean, I really want to talk about a lot of things because we share that ground. I started my career as a trainer, and I'm still being a trainer to a lot of people virtually. So yeah, we'll just talk about it.
It's great, and I love that. You're probably just like me, you love that thing where you kind of see those students being successful, getting a job, and it's like they started from not knowing anything, and now they've kind of grown into this, great admin or developer or whatever it is, So yeah, I love that,
Yeah, it gives you a sense of satisfaction, actually. I mean, when you do deliveries, there's a different kind of experience, but when you train people, there's a completely different kind of experience that you
absolutely
get. So yeah, that's what it is, and you get a lot of respect as well from the people, and that's a part of it. Yeah. Anyways, so tell us about how your journey with Salesforce started. I mean, we really want to know it from day one.
So it all started. So I didn't really know where my journey started until I came to India Dreaming and did that talk at India Dreaming, and actually started working back to see what was the point at which I kind of went into Salesforce, and it all tracked back to Harry Potter, and that
the Goblet of Fire, right?
No, story. Yeah, or whatever it was. I can't even remember now. Yeah, and Harry Potter was the reason why I got into it. I got into and working for this company. I started doing this Harry Potter job, which I'm sure we'll get to, and then worked for this film post-production company, and off the back of that, and the film post-production company wanted to get a CRM in to manage their training, to manage their film post pipeline, and also the sales they did. So I did hardware and software sales kind of thing as well, and I kind of reviewed all the CRMs, saw Salesforce, and went, wow, this is just revolutionary. And I kind of stayed there to implement it, then quit. Another long story, but went to New Zealand with a friend, traveled around New Zealand for a month whilst cramming as much as I could possibly learn about Salesforce, which on the internet wasn't a lot at the time. And then got a job at a consultancy, basically, back in the UK. And that really kind of started me into Salesforce and the love of Salesforce, basically.
Which year was it?
2008, maybe.
8?
Maybe
it was really early. It was very
it
very
was
early.
it was really early on. And I remember I think Visualforce had just come out.
S-Controls.
S-Controls had just been canned, but they were frozen from then on, so you can still edit them, which I think you still can now, actually. You can still edit S-Controls. But you can't create any new ones, which is the same thing that's happening to workflows in it. So next year, so it all goes read-only. So although they're migrating all to Flow, which is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is going to be. And after learning all of this, you got your first job at the same company where you were working for Harry Potter. Was that your first project?
Basically, it was my very first project. And the reason I got that job was because they'd heard I'd worked on creating an e-learning system for the UK government. Okay. And basically it was a test to see if e-learning would work for the UK police or the London police. And it was just like 4 of us to see if it would work. It worked, and then we kind of rolled it off across the whole of the country, which was just mental. And then they heard that I'd done that, and they wanted to do something similar for the visual effects industry, because at the time, a bit like Salesforce really, there was not enough people coming into the industry, into visual effects. Everybody kind of they would watch these massive big budget films on, and all these computer graphics and go, I can't do that. There's no way I could do that. And so they never went into the industry. But actually, there's a lot of very accessible ways you could get into the film industry. And so they created online courses and stuff to kind of get people in. And then they had a kind of film post-production house in-house as well. So you could work on, I think they did actually a couple of the Harry Potter films, Narnia films and stuff. So you could actually get something on your CV as well. But yeah. So then that got me into the company, and then they wanted to replace this CRM, and that's when I got Salesforce in, and I went, aha, this is awesome. And yeah, the rest is history, really.
Got it. And when did you become an MVP? It was 12, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I could probably
2012.
tell you immediately. Yeah, I think it was 2012. Basically, Erica Cool sent me an email. It landed in my mailbox, and I'll never forget it. And saying that, and I think it was the second intake or third intake. I think it was right at the very beginning, basically, of the program. And so there was only like a handful of us.
Only 50 of them, I guess. 40, 50, I guess, at that time.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. 9th of January, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, the email from Erica Cool. Congratulations, you've been selected as our exclusive Salesforce MVP program.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yes, and you too.
Yeah. I'm not anymore, actually.
Well, I'm Hall of Fame, so, it's much better, cooler,
Yeah. So you're a Hall of Fame now, right?
Yeah. Which is basically,
5 years
putting us
straight
out to pasture, and you kind of go into the Hall of Fame if you've been there for 5 years or more, which is actually quite nice as well, because a lot of those old timers from the beginning have now become Hall of Famers, and so it's kind of nice little kind of community within the kind of MVP community, I suppose.
The Hall of Fame community.
So, yeah, which is quite nice. So.
Great. And what is your current job right now? You're working as an independent contractor, or at like NetStrongHold?
So basically, architect for hire, basically technical architecture, looking at projects. At the moment, just tend to be more regulated business, so banks and things like that, where it's sort of looking at how you harden and secure Salesforce, and an architect a solution within that, as well as Salesforce being on loads of different platforms. How do you kind of manage all that? So that's kind of what I've been doing. And then on the other side is, doing the e-learning. So I kind of split my time kind of 50-50, I suppose, between the two.
What exactly your job is as a technical architect? Like for the people who are not aware of what exactly a technical architect does. Yeah,
so I think, so basically I kind of think of an architect, I'd say an architect in general, because you can be a business architect, you could be a technical architect. And I think Salesforce doesn't really talk about business architecture, which is, I think, completely crazy. But essentially, there's multiple different types of architect. And a technical architect, I think of somebody that has like a mile-wide knowledge of Salesforce, for example, but potentially only 3 feet deep across everywhere, but then might go very deep in certain areas. So you kind of know how to architect a solution at a kind of high level, I suppose, but also you can't not know about other technologies and integrations and the best ways to integrate into Salesforce using other kind of platforms. So I'm doing a project at the moment with Snowflake and kind of a data warehouse and the best way of kind of getting data in and out. So Salesforce can contribute to this kind of data lake, I suppose. And that's what I kind of think an architect is. I mean, you're kind of essentially on the project to make sure as best as you can, make sure the project is successful now and going forward. You're not putting in technical debt. You're designing it for the future, basically, as much as you can. And you're kind of setting that kind of architecture scope and principles around how you should develop. So perfect example now is workflows and process builders are essentially going to be kiboshed. Therefore, the principle of making sure that everything now is a flow, for example. And actually, in sometimes I have on a project, I'll set a principle as don't use cloud computing, because every project I want to make sure the business justifies why they're using it so they know the value in it. So it's not telling them not to use it. It's just I want to make sure they're absolutely sure they understand what it is and the reasons for using it. And that, it meets the needs of the business. So if that makes sense, yeah. So it's just not forgotten, basically.
It's not for?
So you don't forget it. So they don't lose the reason why they're using Salesforce or using these cloud platforms to kind of innovate and be, successful on it. So.
And you just said business architect, and Salesforce doesn't talk about business architect. Would you like to throw some light on that?
Yeah. So I don't know why, because I always think of Salesforce as it's a business tool. The most successful projects in Salesforce that I work on are basically when it's being run by the business and not IT. Yeah. Because you can kind of get lost in the tech and you can start building loads of stuff that the users just don't need. And actually only 10% is what they need. And without that kind of business focus, then you can get lost very easily. You can get suddenly millions of Jiras stacking up of stuff that people want, but you're not actually then pushing the boundaries of the platform and actually getting a much bigger business value. So the business architect is kind of, and even actually in technical architecture, you're looking at, okay, what is the current state? So in the technical world of that technical landscape, so all the different systems, all the things that are kind of interconnected, and then what the future state's going to be. So where do we want to be? So we've got 2 data centers with a load of servers in it. We want to move to the cloud. Okay, that's the goal. But you've got lots of, it's an iterative process to get to that end goal. So it's those kind of creating those architectures and principles to get to that end goal and making sure kind of the architecture's followed. But in the same way, a business architect is doing that with a business lens on. It's understanding, okay, where is the business right now? Okay, we've got 50 different sites across Europe, all selling different things. We want to get to the point where we have a centralized sales call center, for example. So we can centralize these products because they're simple products to sell. So the sites can focus on the more complex, bigger value kind of sales, for example. So you know what that end goal for the business is, the vision, or that move to a new industry or whatever it is. And you know what the current state of how the business is set up, how many people you've got in sales, how many people you've got in sales support. And know to get to this end goal, you've got to transition the business to this new way of working and putting in, again, those transitional architectures in so the business can move and transform into this new world. So COVID, perfect example, it was a massive driver to digital transformation, and lots of businesses had to do this literally overnight. But it's something that traditionally would have happened over several years, moving to this kind of more digital way of working. So yeah, and that's the difference. So, but Salesforce is so much, you get a lot of lift and shift projects into Salesforce, where this is what we do, we lift and shift and put it into Salesforce, and you lose the benefit of the platform and all that kind of stuff out of the box and best practice and automation that you just get. So aligning the technical architecture with the business architecture and actually have a business focus, absolutely critical in my opinion. And why there should be more focus on it.
Do you think this role should be played by someone completely different from the technical architect or the consultant or the scrum master involved into that particular project or the product?
Yeah. I think it's got to be from the business. It's got to come from the business. It's got to be somebody that understands where the business is going. But essentially, it works part and parcel with the technical architect. It's there. We're architecting the tech. moving away from this legacy data center, if that's what the move is, in the same way the business is moving as well. And they both have to kind of be aligned. Otherwise, hey, we want to get rid of, everybody's got to go on the road and start selling. But they can only access the application from their computers in the office. Doesn't work, so everything, you need to align it, so.
Do you think project managers can do that, or you need a different kind of skill set rather than just being a project manager in order to do this?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is definitely a different skill set because it's not managing a project. It's same with the architecture. You need to know how to manage change, but and that business approach so the CEO is saying, we need to centralize everything, I don't know, or move into this industry. And then for the business architect, you could have a lot of people that are only trained in this other industry. So what do? Do you get rid of them and rehire lots of people? Do you cross-train them into the new industry? There's lots of complexities around how you transition that business. So, which, it is a specialist kind of skill in the same way a technical architect is. So.
Got it. Do you think we can do anything about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because Salesforce is so much front line of the business, and to be honest, and this is why I kind of think it's not, we don't have to manage the database structure. Obviously it's a cloud computing platform. So a lot of that tech is taken away from us naturally anyway. So we're naturally closer to the business. So in that way, I think there's more opportunity for people to move into business architecture because they understand and are a lot closer to the users using Salesforce than you would be as a database administrator or a lower level, a lot further away from the customer. So in that respect, it's a lot easier, I think, for somebody working in Salesforce to transition into business architecture because you understand the business, you understand the business processes, you know what the current state is, and you know potentially where they want to get to. So and you also kind of know the tech as well. So it's a perfect synergy of knowing, being able to help the business move and to achieve their goals or their, where they want to get to in 5 years or 3 years or whatever it may be.
Got it. Okay. Let's see if we can create some awareness about being a business architect or what exactly it requires to be a business architect.
And I think it's happening, with the architecture, Salesforce architecture side, they are facing, they're focusing it on, technical architecture at the moment, but it is coming out. We're seeing more business analysis stuff coming out into Salesforce in Trailhead and stuff like that. So it is an evolution and it is going to get there. So, I think it's a good thing to get into if you can, in my opinion.
Got it. Okay. Tell us about your journey as a solopreneur or an entrepreneur. Have you always been an independent person?
So to be honest, the only time I've kind of gone permanent, I suppose, was when I wanted to learn something new. And I wanted to jump straight into it. And I knew I couldn't get a contract in it or be freelance in it. So that first Salesforce job I had was working for this consultancy as a permanent employee for, I think it was about a year. I think I stayed there.
Accenture?
And then no, it wasn't. It was a really small, basically Accenture wasn't in Salesforce at that time. Okay. And actually I remember I had a choice of working for Capgemini or this small consultancy. And at the time I went with this small consultancy, which you'd think is a little bit odd, but that's only because Capgemini did not have anybody that knew Salesforce. They were literally starting their Salesforce practice. So I kind of thought, well, actually, I'm just literally, I've got 1 month's, or 1 month plus the knowledge of the startup of, implementing it at this bank, but it's really basic, really. I wanted somewhere where I could completely immerse myself in lots of projects with lots of people that already knew Salesforce that I could learn off them really quickly. So that's why I kind of picked, went to this smaller consultancy, which I think was, the best thing I could have done, really. And then ended up in other consultancies along the way.
Got it. And when did you started being on your own?
So I actually started before Salesforce. So I actually kind of started when I was about 17, when I couldn't actually in the UK legally start my first company. And so my dad became the director of my company. And I basically was working as a network support engineer and desktop support. But, and my first job was working at the BBC, which was incredible. But it was really good because it got me that that kind of understanding of networks and firewalls and routing and IP addresses and security and all that kind of jazz, which kind of really helped me later on. But yeah, and then really since then, I've kind of always freelanced and contracted with different companies. And then when I went to university, every holiday I would work at a different company. Just because I knew at the end of my degree, I wanted to make sure I had a degree plus experience. So I'd be, ahead of everybody else coming out of university, or otherwise everybody would be coming out of university all at the same time, all with the same degree. And, how do you pick as an employer which one to go with? This one who's got an extra experience. Cool, I'll go with that one. So yeah, that's what I did, which was great. And then I kind of went into software development. It was at the beginning of the .com, or coming to the end of the first .com boom. And so at the time, if you knew HTML, you were, big money. and this is what, like, tech, it goes in waves.
Was there JavaScript at that time?
No. Oh yeah, JavaScript was only used. I think it was just coming out. Yeah, it did exist, but it was literally just used for form validation, pretty much. That's what everybody used it for, and that was it. You couldn't really do much more with it. And then as things went on, and this is one of the reasons I moved out of the network support, because even when I was doing network support and desktop support, the rates were really high, but then more people got into that, and then the rates started to drop. I was like, oh, what's this code thing? I learned code at university. And it's like, hey, jump into this, big money knowing HTML. And then obviously more people got into that. And so, you're going server side. So PHP, Java, stuff like that. E-commerce sites I kind of worked on. And then it kind of career progressed and moved more into e-learning systems, again, developing them. And then eventually, into Salesforce and CRM. And actually, I worked for a different CRM provider before I actually started working for Salesforce as well, which was a more process-driven CRM, whereas
Dynamic
Salesforce
CRM.
No, it's actually it's renamed a couple of times. It's called Caboodle at the time. I think Sword bought them, and it might have been bought again, I think. But it's basically a process-driven CRM, but specialist in call centers where calls have to be answered, prompt quickly, information needs to pop quickly. You've got challenges between other teams to be better at other, and all this kind of stuff. And they were very niche in that kind of call center space. Whereas Salesforce was a lot more record-driven. You've got to find the records. You've got to search for the records. Whereas now with Flow, they're moving more into that kind of process-driven space, which is fab. So hopefully a lot more of it to kind of, hopefully maybe in 10 years, 5 years maybe, we're not managing records. We're not going to records. Everything is being driven by flows, which would be great, for certain businesses, So
you always wanted to be like an entrepreneur who works independently, or was that something that you figured out that you enjoy the most in your life? And what are the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, I think...
Yeah.
I think I think one of the big things is getting stuck into politics when you're working at a company. And I never liked that. I just wanted to solve the problem, and move and fix it and move on. And also I'm constantly wanting to learn. So being stuck in one company, knowing just that one tech, just did not interest me at all, really, because then you're kind of only knowing. I suppose now is a little different because with this SaaS and Salesforce is constantly pushing out more and more new innovation. It's basically got a longer lifetime. They've kind of stretched that kind of tech lifetime out, I suppose. Whereas when, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, it was a lot more, this is the hardware, this is the tech, this is what you used. You could only use this tech because it was only compatible with that tech. So you were stuck on this tech. But then you want to start using virtualization and VMware and all this other cool stuff that was back then. Well, you couldn't, because that's just not the architecture and way they worked. So you're kind of stuck in this kind of old tech, I suppose. And being able to be freelance meant I could always go into a contract or a job where I knew 80% of what I needed to know, but I knew there was an extra 20% of stuff I didn't know that I knew I could learn, and actually, bring, and therefore that could propel me and slowly shift my role basically where I wanted it to go. Which I think is similar to I don't know, you probably get the same thing with your students, where they always think that jumping to Salesforce is a kind of, you're either in it or you're not, and it's like a completely different role. And it's like, well, no, you've got a CV, you've got all this industry experience potentially doing something else. You've got all this business knowledge, or, it might come from a financial background or whatever. And actually you can use that in your Salesforce career, but use it as that kind of springboard to get you into a Salesforce job. And it's like, I don't know why people don't, it makes a lot of sense to me, don't just go straight to a Salesforce admin, like a tester wanting to jump straight into Salesforce. Well, become a tester in Salesforce. Yeah. So then you start learning Salesforce, and it's a lot easier then to go in to become a Salesforce admin, because you already know Salesforce from your testing. So.
Okay. And what do you think are the pros and cons of, so why I'm asking this question is because 4 years back when we met in India Dreaming as well, at that time we had a deep conversation about, you asked me why do you want to start a company, or why are you running your own company? And I said something else. And you are doing things independently from so long. And I just want to know, like, what makes you prefer being alone rather than, so you can
building a company.
Yeah, building a company.
Do you mean?
Yeah, that's the
case.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, it's being my own boss, and then not having. It's two different things, really. I think when you're running a company, you've kind of you are your own boss, but then you're in charge of this people. You're
responsible for them.
You're responsible for them. And it is a different kettle of fish. Whereas I, as a freelancer, I kind of think of, well, for me, it's kind of, I can be a lot more free in what I can do. I can jump different industries. I can go, hey, look, you know what? I want to take 3 months out and do a holiday somewhere with my family. And you don't get that kind of, actually, no, I've got to be constantly checking my phone. I've got to be, keeping the sales pipe coming in. Otherwise, oh my God, 3 months time, and all those kind of things. So, and I think I did start doing that in my career, and I realized that, and I did build a team up, and it was all around building e-learning solutions. And we had a big client, Financial Times, but then I kind of realized that actually, this wasn't really for me. It was more, I wanted, still keep that freelance ability, help people, and kind of push the knowledge out, I suppose, and have that kind of freedom to do what I want, but also kind of build up that kind of background, I suppose, iterative money, or money coming in each month. So I'm kind of free financially as well to do what I want to do. So, that could be, renting houses out, share dealing, selling apps, whatever it may be. So I've got that. I'm comfortable enough to know I've got something to fall back on. And then it means that I can do really what I want to do. So
what are some things that someone needs to give up if they want to be an entrepreneur and build a company? According to you?
I think, it's a lot of time. Actually, So I work in a building which has a lot of entrepreneurs in it, and they all say the same thing. They're all time poor. They want to invest. They need more time running their businesses, and a lot of them, when I'm talking to them, it's like, how do you scale yourself? And I think a lot. I think of a director of a company or a CEO of a company really as you've got 3 hats on, yeah? You've got the good entrepreneurs that are really good at being entrepreneurial and that startup type business. Then you've got the directors and CEOs that are really good at running that medium-sized company, could be 300 people, whatever. And then you've got the kind of international global directors, but it's really hard to transition between them. Yeah. So it's almost like some entrepreneurs, they get to the point where they can't delegate. They still want to be in control of everything. And that is the blocker for the entire company, basically. And how do you then move into this medium-sized company with that, being able to delegate, and it's a different way of managing. So I can't even remember what the question was, but yeah, that's why. Yeah.
I mean,
the challenges for entrepreneurs. Yeah. So yeah, it's time management and being able to go. And this is where I think Salesforce is great, where it's kind of like, well, actually, you're doing all these manual tasks. Actually, I'm working with an entrepreneur right now. He's built up this global company from his bedroom almost. And it's now he's realized he's kind of hit a ceiling with how they get their sales in. And it's now kind of going, okay, how do we scale the business in a way that I can scale myself and focus on those sales that I need to be focusing on, and those easier jobs, those kind of the sales that are kind of,
quality leads, basically quality business.
Yeah, but it's the same thing coming in. They know how to do it. It's very easy to push it all the way through the business. Other people can do it. But how do you manage that lead management so you can, then scale that up and then focus on the things that are important for the business? So I think it's that you want to make sure you do a good job with it for everyone, but you're scaling, and how do you manage that? And Salesforce could be a great way of kind of visualizing all that and being able to kind of push things out to different people, but still monitor the progress and making sure things are successful. So yeah, definitely time poor, and just peaks and troughs of, yay, everything's going brilliantly and you're celebrating and everything's amazing. And then the next day it's disaster, cash flow nightmares. There's stuff going, whatever it is. And then the following day is amazing. So you've got to have like a hard skin to know that when it gets bad, it can maybe just drive through, because there are, other things that make it really worthwhile.
To take care of, yeah.
Yeah.
So what you talk about in here is the three things: small, medium, or large, or global, whatever you want to call it. The transition between all of these requires a different kind of person altogether. So if you have you read this Lean Startup by Eric Ries? If you have got the chance. Okay, no.
So.
Okay, so the thing
I read a lot actually, but I think that's probably one I haven't.
Okay, so so there are two kind of people who build businesses. Number one is who knows how to build a business and what to build a business on and how to capitalize and monetize it, taking it from 0 to 1, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people out there who enjoys doing things and enjoy building a business and wants to take it from 0 to 1, but it requires a complete different person, mindset and skill set to take it from 1 to N.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that these people who take a business from 0 to 1 struggles with.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where the game gets a little difficult, because you have to evolve.
Yeah, and I think it's yeah, do you evolve? Do you I think also it's understanding your own limitations, what you're good at and what you're not so good at. Like, I am rubbish at accountancy. I leave that up to my accountant. But it's the same when running a business. It's like, I know I'm rubbish at marketing. I know I'm whatever it is. I'm going to know that this...
You're an amazing marketer.
But I know that, this person is great for it, and I trust them, and away they go. But yeah, scaling, it's some companies get consultancies in to help them do that scaling bit, or others go, well, you know what, I'm the chairman now of this company, I'm not the CEO, I'm going to get a CEO in that actually knows how to scale to do the next 5 years kind of thing, and I'm just the figurehead, but really there's somebody behind there that's knowing exactly what to do and how to scale. So
got it. And I mean, do you think that doing business nowadays compared from like last 10 years is getting difficult, and there are more big businesses that are growing nowadays than the small and the medium-sized businesses that were there out earlier?
It's the evolution of tech. Depends what it is and the tech. And actually, ironically, I was talking to somebody from India actually about a week or two ago, and they wanted advice on starting a Salesforce consultancy basically. And And it is. There's a lot. I get a lot of emails. You probably do too, from LinkedIn and stuff saying, "Hey, we're a Salesforce consultancy. We can help." And it's like, great, you and every other email that I get, and development and stuff like that. But this particular person had already got a business doing something different, and I'm like, well, actually, your niche is the bridge between what you currently do now and Salesforce. Just focus on that element and the crossover, and focus your consultancy on being brilliant at that. And then everybody knows that this is what you do. And then whenever somebody, and market, and, you may not get it, things immediately, but then people know that you are the company to go to for this problem, to solve this issue. And then you build a consultancy around that, rather than just being a generic, hey, I'm a consultancy. So yeah, there's loads of consultancies out there, but finding that business problem, becoming a guru at solving that problem, that everybody knows you as that exactly is, golden, I think. And
people are more focused nowadays to going to someone who's a master of the art that they're looking for, rather than just going to a big brand or a big company which does almost everything.
Yeah, I think, and also I think a lot. Also, I think companies are getting more wise to the fact of these big consultancies. They'll manage these massive projects, but actually, it's a load of grads that get put on the project, and actually, the value you get from it is kind of not as great as you do bringing in a consultancy that just knows this one technology. And actually, I have to say, one of the best projects I worked on recently was a project where they did exactly that. And it actually was a government organization. They got a company in that were brilliant at business analysis, that were known for it. They got a Salesforce consultancy in, which was brilliant at Salesforce. They got another team in that was brilliant at agile project management. And basically, it was an astonishing project, and also testing as well and things like this. But each group were experts in their own way. And it was the best project ever, because everybody was top of the game. Everybody really knew their stuff well. And it was, even like it was the true agile project I've been on, because everybody does agile projects, but they're usually fragile rather than agile. And this was very, every Friday morning, everybody congregated in the office, hundreds of people, and the key Scrum team leads said what happened that week. And it was all very transparent, from, the tech teams all the way to the business the business there as well, going, yeah, that report or that thing you've just done transformed the way we do, business now, or, help these people within the government. So yeah, it was great.
Okay. And, okay, got it. Okay, let me just ask it. What are your thoughts on bigger companies acquiring smaller companies and then merging them? Because this is happening a lot right now. Are you aware of it?
It's happened a lot over the years. So
yeah, over the years it has happened, but last 1 year it has been a crazy thing, I guess, especially into the Salesforce ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it happens a lot. A lot of So some consultancies, they set themselves up knowing they want to be bought. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's part of their business plan. It is, and I've worked for some of those and done really well out of it. But it is in their plan to get sold, or bought at the end of it. And I know of a consultancy, quite a big consultancy, global consultancy, got bought by a bigger consultancy. And I think they kind of regretted it afterwards, because the culture there was just very different to the culture that the business was. So they sucked in all the employees. All the employees were like, wait a minute, this is different. And they didn't really adopt the culture of the company they were buying. They just kind of stamped their own, ways of working on it. And basically all the people kind of eventually left, I suppose. So where's the value, But it depends on what the acquisition is for as well. It could be that you're just taking out a competitor, maybe. It could be, so the reason for the purchase is, again...
it drives the decision, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and it could be some have been really good, where they've bought a consultancy and they've literally just put their badge on and that's it. They've left it as their own business unit of, Salesforce expertise.
The same culture with everything.
Yeah, and it's just kept the same, off to one side, as that is the go-to place for Salesforce for the rest of the consultancy. Which I think, that tends to work well or not, as the case may be. But then you kind of have different challenges of integration. So it's a bit swings and roundabouts, I think. And it depends on what the acquisition is, that you're acquiring and the reasons for it. You might be just getting the expertise. It may be just
for the logos.
It. Yeah, the logos. Or it could be just the intellectual property. There may be apps and stuff in there that is a value to your business. And actually the consultant part of it, not so much. Not too interested in that. So I think, it's lots of different reasons for why some work and why some don't. So,
got it. Great. Okay, so apart from so your company's name is NetStrongHold, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So,
I do my consulting from that. Yeah.
On the name of NetStrongHold, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So apart from NetStrongHold, you're a very renowned trainer, and you've been training people into Salesforce from so long. You started I guess 4 years back or 5 years back, a Force Guru, co-founded it. And apart from that, you also run Admin to Architect, where you have trained more than 80,000 people, as you just mentioned, and you've got courses on Udemy since nobody even knew what Salesforce was on Udemy. So tell us where your passion for training started, like where it actually started.
So I think it probably started at that project for the London police, I suppose, where at the time, everybody, if you needed to learn something, you had to travel to this this centre in the middle of nowhere, do your training for a week, come back. But it may not be quite relevant for your job, or it might be that it's relevant, but, in a year's time. And at the time, the UK, there was lots of things happening within the London police and UK police, of things happening that was just based, like race and diversity challenges and things like this, where learning could really help to train people in understanding other cultures, for example, or even just kind of investigations like murder investigations that may not have gone so well because of the knowledge that the officers have had, and how do you train that and how do you kind of improve that. And so this is where I think I realized that kind of e-learning was a great way of being able to push things out quickly, short things that kind of could resonate with people to help them learn something, but help them achieve and do better at their jobs. Although every policeman in the UK absolutely hates me now, because obviously I've taken away their cushy trips to the lovely retreat to do their training, put up at a hotel, and now it's just whether they can, during their job, just trying to do a bit of e-learning. So apart from that, I think it's great. But it saved a lot of money for the taxpayer as well, and it's
they must be cursing you now.
yeah.
Great. Okay, but like what happens with a lot of people is once they get into the delivery side of things, they're almost not at all interested into training people. Even if I've seen a lot of people who are good at deliveries, knows the project or knows what they've built inside out. But when the time comes for the user training or any kind of training that requires them to talk to people and explain them how to use what they have built, they struggle at it like anything, and it's very difficult for them.
Yeah, and I think it's because, and one of the reasons I kind of started Admin to Architect as well was it wasn't just a certification course. It was kind of thinking of what are those softer skills that you need, and one of those is actually demonstrating the value of what you've produced, and that kind of training and communication, which all kind of comes back to that business benefit of why you did it in the first place. And also knowing that, okay, I'm doing this piece of work, and it's knowing what's in it for me, for the user. So what is the user getting that you're doing that's going to add value to what they're doing day to day? And if you've got that connection with, the users that you're doing the work for, what the value is of what you're doing, then being able to then communicate that is a lot easier. But also having the softer skills of actually knowing how to communicate it in the first place, and, having the confidence to believe in yourself and say, look, this is really cool. This is really going to benefit you because that's what the whole point we're doing it for. And so you can communicate it and say, hey, look, this is going to really give you add value. And this is how you use it, basically. And even just little features and things like that is like the Kanban board in Salesforce always just kind of, for some salespeople, is like, wow, I can now see all my opportunities because they've never gone to the Kanban view,
view,
yeah, and stuff like that, where it's even just in the platform, just knowing little bits that you kind of give, little bits of dust that go with your, the thing you've just built, and the platform tools that are already there, so you can show them, the value within what you've done, as well as the kind of the tools within Salesforce as well that come out of the box.
Got it. Okay, so you just mentioned about the certifications. I've got one amazing question to ask from you, and know what's your take on it. And the question is, how much do you think certifications are important? And the question is further divided into two parts. Number one, for the person who's just started their career and who might be having a job, but like it's almost been like 6 months or just a year that they have got into the Salesforce world and trying to build their skill set as well as the personal brand if they want to build that.
Yeah,
that's number one. Number two, the people who have already been into the industry for like at least 3 to 4 years or 5-6 years or something like that, knows how to do the job better than anybody else out there, but are not interested into studying for the certification. So yeah, let's start with the first one.
Okay. So I'm very glad you said certifications, not Salesforce certifications, because in my opinion, yeah, it's great to get Salesforce certifications, but if you just keep like, how many have you got? I think I've got 17 or
17,
19.
yeah. 17.
Yeah, 17 or so. And really, the difference between 5 and 17, yay. But if I always think of it, CV hitting the desk or resume hitting the desk of a company, and if you put them side by side, what do I want to see that's going to give this candidate more value than the other one for my business? And so if you're kind of looking at lots and lots of Salesforce certifications, then yeah, okay. But then if I can see that this other candidate has got an Agile certification, a Salesforce dev certification, and maybe they've come from a business analyst background and they've got a business analyst certification.
Scrum Master or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Scrum Master certification. Then I'm like, actually, this is good value because they know Salesforce, maybe not a huge amount, but they know Salesforce, but they know also those softer skills of how to work in an agile environment and be, good at working with the team. So got to get them all whack-a-mole, Salesforce certifications. It's not a massive value.
It's not a race that's going on that you have to come first.
No,
you
exactly.
have to have the maximum number of them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same as with badges on Trailhead. It's like, got to get them all. And it's like, well, yeah, but then the value is with, I think, merging other tech and other experience into the Salesforce ecosystem. And you can be very kind of insular in the ecosystem. You can just think Salesforce. But actually, what projects actually integrate to, okay, perfect example is if you're starting out as a consultant, if you're starting out as an admin and you're working for a consultancy going on greenfield sites, yeah, there's the Salesforce piece of building in Salesforce, but I guarantee you in every single project, there's some kind of data migration, of migrating data into Salesforce. And just having experience of how to design that kind of mapping of the data, knowing what transformations you need to do on the fields, knowing that this field length is larger than the Salesforce field, it could get truncated, and just building, an ETL migration into Salesforce and knowing that, really valuable in my opinion. But you'll never find that in a Salesforce certification. And there's tools like I use Talend Open Studio, which is incredible tool for and free as well, for bringing data in through multiple different databases or web services and things like that, bringing that data together, crunching it, transforming bits of data to getting it into a way that it can be imported into Salesforce, but also repeatable. Is a script that you just run again and again and again, rather than using Excel, which actually I just did a Ask Me Anything for a client, and one of them came up with, we've got these in the project, there's these data transformations that happen, and they've been using Excel to do them. And I'm like, don't use Excel. It's horrible, because you need to know, if you are using Excel, that Excel basically can change the data, so if you had and screw the data up, it could change all the dates from UK to US format, or, if you've got 0001 as a unique identifier, it drops all the zeros and you just got one. Well, that's not the same data. Yeah. And it's all this kind of stuff, which, you need to understand if you're going to do a migration, because especially when you do a data migration, you can get all the data in, everybody starts using it, it looks kind of okay, and then suddenly they start realizing, oh, this field on all these records is wrong, or this data has been and now you're in a really hard position, because people have now started changing and adding to the data in Salesforce. You've got the data from the previous system, so now you're doing fuzzy matching to try and figure out if the field has changed. And I've been in this situation before, and trying to get that data in, and so you want to make sure it's right before you get it into Salesforce. So yeah, data integration, ETL work, experience in that.
Do you really think like if someone writes down all of these skill sets into their resume, recruiters are even aware about all of these things that you're talking about?
Well, that's another thing. But to be honest, I was talking to one recruiter, and he said, and they were saying he doesn't even look at the certifications. For him, he always is looking at the rest of the CV, experience, what they have done on the platform, rather than the certification.
What value they've brought for the previous clients or for the previous projects. That is something that matters more.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you've got no previous experience, you could have a massive impact for a non-profit or a charity. So like in the UK and US, you can get, I don't think in India yet, but you can get 10 free licenses of Salesforce for a non-profit. So that is brilliant, to go to a local charity and say, hey, look, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
I want to volunteer. I want to see how I can improve things for your charity. And I want to do it all in Salesforce. Now, I'll show it to you. I'll demo it once I've completed it, and I'll work with you to kind of, you don't have to use it at the end of the day, but if you do, it's there for you to use. And that is brilliant for CV. Voila, you've now got something for your CV. You've also
very much more important than the certifications, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And also learning, for me, is much better when you've got a project or something to go with, because you're learning a lot more about the realities rather than what Salesforce wants you to learn. And I remember actually I made a mobile app for a theatre production, and it was an Android, and I knew nothing about making mobile apps. And this theatre production, so unlike a tech project where you can push the deadline usually a couple of weeks or whatever, this is people turning up with their tickets at a show, so they needed the app to work. So it was like a hard deadline. And basically I used that to learn how to write mobile apps, so iOS apps and Java, Android apps, and created an app for them. And it was a really focused, right, I've got to learn this. And did it. And what I thought was quite an easy project turned out to be a little more complicated than I thought. But it was great, because you got to the show, and everybody had this app, and everybody was using it as part of the immersive show. And yeah, it's a great achievement. And also you'd learn something from it as well, but actually real life experience. So it's the best
Your experience
way to learn.
matters more than anything, actually.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay.
And this is why I kind of try and, like in my courses, I try and put I actually have like best practice videos in there, which essentially are, if it's a best practice video, you don't have to watch it. It's got totally irrelevant for the certification, but for me is absolutely vital to know when working in Salesforce. So, and actually I've just done one for sandboxes, redone a sandboxes best practice video, and you've got, these are the sandboxes, the developer pro, the partial sandbox and the full sandbox. But there's a lot of reasons why you would never use a partial sandbox ever. But also when you could use it instead of a full sandbox and it's still being a full data sandbox. And so understanding the best approach.
The differences.
Yeah. So,
and that only comes with the experience, and that's exactly what you're sharing over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's great. But I still didn't got the question. The answer of the question. Number one, the person who recently started working into Salesforce, should they even think about getting certifications, or it's up to them? It's not compulsory or it's not mandatory?
I would definitely say yes, get at least a general certification. Absolutely. Because
name the general certifications according to you.
So for me, it will be App Builder or an admin certification. I think admin is the broadest, I suppose. That kind of, you can touch a lot of things. And then App Builder is a lot more around the building of the apps. And I think a lot of people then go, hey, I want to become a code developer. And I'm like, over the years of using Salesforce, the code is being pushed further and further and further away as flows got better and other parts of the platform are getting better. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, if you want to. But in my opinion, I think much better route is going maybe the architect route. So having that, and like, for example, the sharing and visibility certification, you'd think, I'm not an architect. You could have that in your mind thinking, I'm not an architect, I'm just an admin. But actually, if you look at the sharing and visibility certification, they have got development security part of it. But if you ignore that and ace everything else, you've passed the certification. The majority of it is declarative functionality.
All
and
the
also,
profiles, permission sets and everything.
Yeah, territory management, all that kind of stuff you can, learn. It's all declarative. And for me, again, if I was looking at 2 CVs, I've have 20 CVs with app builder, sales consultant, service consultant, but then I get another one which got admin and sharing and visibility, and I'll be like, oh, actually, it's different to the millions there. And if you've got a bit of experience and you've kind of, your CV basically stands out to me. It's all about making, how can you make you stand out more than everybody else in the pile, basically. So following the sheep of everybody else, probably not a great idea.
Got it. And that's something that I would also recommend to anybody who's out there. Getting a certification around the experience that you've got in your job or at the projects that you've done is going to be more beneficial for applying for other jobs as well as for getting a raise at the job that you are, compared to getting the certifications which have got no relevance to your current projects or your previous projects or the experience that you've got. That shows that all the game that you're playing over here is getting more and more certifications and probably looking for more and more raise.
And there's somebody on LinkedIn I think I replied to who's in healthcare and wanted to get into Salesforce. I'm like, okay, get the admin certification to get your basis, but then move into the health cloud. Really learn it because you've got that knowledge of healthcare. You've got all that. And so if somebody looks at your CV, oh, you got healthcare, you got admin, okay, that's all. But you've got all this healthcare experience.
Yeah.
Brilliant. In you go,
Yeah, you can, you'll be, on the top, right, in the list of the people who... in the list of the recruiter, your CV is going to be onto the top just because of your previous experience and the certification that you've got. Okay, so that's the answer for number one kind of people who have just started their career.
Yeah.
What about the people who have who are into the industry from like at least 4 years or something like that, have delivered multiple projects, been doing great, knows their job better than anybody else out there? Do they still need certifications, or do they still need to study to get some certifications? Because there are a lot of people out there who are not at all interested anymore into getting more certifications. So what's your recommendation for them?
I think it all comes down to, where do you want to go? What is your kind of goal, and how do you want to really add value to businesses? So, for example, if you're moving more into bigger and bigger projects, then things like managing big amounts of data becomes more of a challenge. And especially if you're kind of working at you're on a greenfield site or greenfield project, but it's a massive multinational, because you don't know about the big data issues, then actually what you're building is just not going to scale. So being able to have that knowledge and putting it in right from the beginning, really valuable. And for me as an architect, if I know it's a project that is going to have these challenges with a lot of data coming in, I want to make sure that team, those developers working on the team, absolutely know, and the designers designing the project know those challenges basically, and understand how they're going to work around it. So for that, it's great. So getting the certifications, or even just at least knowing all about it. Because for some people, certifications cost a lot of money. But even if you can prove that you know all that stuff, at the end of the day, for me, if you've got a load of certifications and you come interview with me, I'm going to test you at that level. Yeah. If you come in with less, but I can see that you've got experience in big data or whatever it is, or you come across in the interview knowing that stuff, I'm going to start basically the way I interview is I progressively get harder and harder in my questions, to the point where you can't answer the questions.
That's the best way to interview anybody,
Yeah. And I want to know where your boundaries is. I want to know where you fit. And actually, I employed somebody who had just passed their admin certification, and I put them in as one of the lead developers, which you might think is a little bit odd, but actually their experience before in other CRMs and the object-orientated development and also languages and stuff like that, and all their experience, plus the knowledge that I had another lead developer that knew all the Salesforce specific stuff, and they could work together, meant that I knew that actually the value that they were bringing to the table was a lot more valuable of bringing that that knowledge into the Salesforce ecosystem than being just Salesforce, which then again is also, if you want to go with architecture and move into that space, then TOGAF 9 certification, enterprise architecture, those kind of certifications or knowledge to understand, well, actually, Salesforce is just one cog in this massive tapestry in an enterprise environment. So knowing how it fits and how to ask the right questions. Like whenever I work for a company, I ask, have you got an app landscape diagram? So I can see where Salesforce fits in the landscape of everything else. So I know that when the business says, hey, we want to start storing invoices in Salesforce, I know that, well, actually, you've got a system over there that does it, but we can do an integration instead, so you're building the right solutions. So yeah, again, it's understanding your goal, where you want to get to, and what is the best approach, either certifications, knowledge, or experience to get there, I suppose.
Got it. I think I got the answers of it. Okay. Of you being a trainer, what are some of the struggles and joys of being a trainer? Because it's a tough job. It's really tough.
Oh my word, there's many. I think for me, is knowing the level of the training that you need to give to a student. So Salesforce is usually a little woolly of what comes into the certification, and you can go too deep, I suppose, or you could be too basic, and it's finding that kind of level that, people can pass the certifications, but also know the best practice of using the tools. And that can be, and also the releases constantly changing everything you're doing. And so you're constantly kind of tweaking the training to make it more efficient. But yeah, I think that's it, really.
Got it. Yeah. So you were just sharing the struggles of being a trainer and the joys of being a trainer.
Yeah. So, so the biggest one I think is Salesforce constantly pulling the rug under your feet with all the changes they make, which is brilliant because there's innovation coming to the platform again and again and again. I think, it's also just making sure you get the right level in the training is always a little challenge, and actually know, because the platform is so huge now, actually really knowing what you'll get in the certification is all a bit of a challenge, which I know it's not all about the certification. It's not about, being able to pass it. It's being able to really understand that set of tools well to this certain level. But it's always fun when Salesforce changes the certification a bit, and you're kind of like, okay, so what level does this go down to now? Especially like if you compare admin and app builder certification to the sharing and visibility, I suppose, you've got a lot, sharing and visibility obviously goes in a huge amount of detail on security, territory management, stuff like that. But then do you put territory management in the admin and app builder courses or not? Because not a huge amount of people use territory management in my experience anyway. So for me, it's not, the best skill, one of the things you can kind of leave on the shelf really for when you need to learn it. But then if you go the trailhead route, there's a lot of modules going in a whole range of different levels, and you could learn a module, but actually no way you have enough information to take the test, or vice versa. You spend, a week learning something that to a massive amount of detail when actually it's not really only a small amount of knowledge needed for it. So it's finding the balance. I think it's just challenging.
Got it. Okay, now let's talk about London's Calling. How did you get the idea of London's Calling, and how did it even came into your mind that this is something that I want to do?
So when we kind of started the user groups up in London, it kind of started off as just one user group for the whole of the country pretty much. And then slowly more and more user groups kind of started happening. And it was in a few people's minds that they wanted a kind of a countrywide gathering, I suppose. And it kind of really came to a head on Pier 42, is it, in San Francisco, one Dreamforce or just before Dreamforce. And a group of us, we kind of sat down and we're kind of like, hey, let's actually do an event for London, or for the UK, or it was just kind of London really, the user groups in London, because I think we had an admin user group, developer user group, non-profit user group, and a couple of others. Hey, and it became more of a countrywide kind of event. And it was literally designed on the back of a napkin, literally. And it was originally a 2-day event, and then we kind of put it down to a 1-day event. And then we kind of started putting it together, I suppose. And actually, because I came from a theatre background, creating shows and things like this, it was kind of like, well, it's a similar thing, really, except for you've just got sponsors there and speakers. But you've still got stages, you've still got, it's a similar, people buying tickets, So for me, it was probably a softer intro into it, I suppose, or more accessible, I suppose. But others on the team it was a massive, oh my God, how do we do this? This is a bit crazy. And also we always had that kind of, we still didn't know if anybody was going to turn up really on the day, because it was the first time we'd ever done it. So we made sure that the sponsors paid for the venue, basically, I think, and anything that we had costed that we need to pay out before the event started on the day. And then the ticket just basically paid for the food and all the stuff that was kind of scaling up based on the number of numbers. So we knew we were kind of safe if absolutely nobody turned it up, as long as, the sponsors have paid for everything else, the venue and stuff. So great, we could just run away and live in Tahiti or something for 3 years. but yeah, no, it was great. But it was a massive success. We sold out, and we kind of sold out every year since. And we've always had a kind of an online experience as well, so that people can access, and actually, which really helped us in COVID, because our event was actually scheduled the day before the whole of the UK lockdown for COVID, and so we literally had about 2 weeks notice to move it from an in-person event to an online event. Luckily, all the rooms were streamed anyway. And so we did it was a massive panic to get lots of pre-recorded videos from everybody. And we had a very small contingent at the venue. So about 10 of us really, and a couple of speakers that did turn up. And we just ran it the day from the venue, and it was utterly mental, but great fun. And I think we had like 8,000 people watching online, and plus the people that, bought tickets as well. So no, it's a fun day. And then this year we did a full online experience, which it was good. So yeah, no, it was really, really fun.
So like the next year it's going to be online, or
no? So we're in person. Hopefully.
Got it.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, in person, we're at a new venue, which we did have actually for that COVID event, but nobody turned up. So we were literally walking around a 1,300 old brewery, Seater brewery, but hopefully, fingers crossed, next year it's going to be in person in June, and you're all welcome. So please come if you want, or watch online. And hopefully it's going to be very fun. We always like to kind of push the boundaries of these kind of dreaming events every year at London's Calling. So hopefully it will be another step,
It's actually one of the most sorted event out there in the world, apart from Dreamforce and the Trailer DX that happens. You guys have done an amazing job. I highly appreciate it.
No, it's good. It's fun doing. It's a lot of work, but it's really fun. And I think next year it's going to be, how do we bring, like, I always hate the way that, you're either you're having an online experience or you've got an in-person experience. And for me, next year, it's how do we bring these two groups of people together to collaborate? So hopefully it's going to be kind of interesting. So, yeah.
It's going to be fun. There are a lot of platforms, I guess, who have started showing up to like present all of these kind of events. So yeah, you can just
and even just new people that have never spoken before speak at London's Calling. Like we had an admin guy, I think it was an admin or a developer from Russia, who it was his first time public speaking in a foreign language as well, and he did brilliantly. So yeah, we'll be opening calls for presentations. Probably we usually do it about November time. So yeah, if you've got an idea, literally the door's open, submit your idea. And if it's great, we always do it blind. So we have no idea who's submitting. So, if it's a great idea and you want to present, then yeah, all good.
Great. Okay. So, on 9 January 2012, you became a Salesforce MVP. Tell us what it takes to be a Salesforce MVP.
Oh, that's what it takes. It takes, I think I can't really put a word on it, really. I think when I kind of realized, and everybody else realized, we used to do these kind of MVP meetups in the US where Salesforce would fly us all out to the US. And you're kind of sitting in a room of people all like yourself, which is really weird. But essentially, it's people that are kind of wanting to give, wanting to share their knowledge, wanting to collaborate, and this real feeling of family. And just from their own hearts. It's not a goal to become an MVP. If you've got that in your mind, then it's fine. But I think a lot of MVPs prefer to say, it's something that you get
it shouldn't
awarded.
Be a goal to be
no,
to
exactly.
An MVP,
yeah. But even so, even now, it's like when I became an MVP, it just came a bit out of the blue. But there were so little people in the environment. And I actually, the way I learned Salesforce was answering questions in the Trailblazer boards or whatever they were back then.
Developer community.
Yeah. And I thought if other people have got these questions, then I will probably get these same questions. So I'd research the question and post it and answer the question. That's how I learned. And then Salesforce saw that and thought, actually, we'll give you an MVP instead, to reward you for helping the community. So I think it's kind of, I think now it's kind of like finding your niche and there's lots of areas of the platform now, and actually being really great and supporting the community in that area is, you know, a great way of showing, you know, the goal, you know, the being an MVP, and the chance, you know, your chances obviously increase if you do have MVP as a goal, which I think is fine. But then when you get the MVP, you realize the goal isn't, the work has just started, basically. The work's just started, really. And actually, you want to keep it, and actually you end up doing even more stuff for the community. So really, that's why it's really not a goal, because firstly, once you get it, if you do get it, you want to keep it and you carry on. And also that, it's kind of like something that comes within, you know, supporting the community and yeah.
So your advice for someone who aspires to be a Salesforce MVP is not to aspire to be a Salesforce MVP.
Yeah, I think
just
so.
Give back genuinely.
Yeah, and yeah, I think so. But even when I became an MVP, I knew about the MVP program. And I kind of thought, I like this group of people. I respect this group of people, and I want to be an MVP. So actually, for me, it was a bit of a goal, personally, to become an MVP. But I think a lot of people, it's not a bad thing.
It wasn't for me.
Yeah, but it's not a bad thing. Yeah, exactly. It's different for different people.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
So what's your advice then?
I think if you want the MVP to be a goal, then make it a goal, you know, honestly.
And then what to do next?
And then it's just
after making it as a goal.
Well, you realize you've got to carry on because you don't want to lose it, because it's only for a year. So, and then you realize.
No, I mean, like you've never been an MVP, but okay, this John has never been an MVP, but John wants to aspires to be an MVP. What should John do?
Look at other MVPs. Look at what they do. Look at you're giving to the community. You're helping and supporting them. Might be that your personal brand or your niche is a certain area of Salesforce, and just become really good at that area. And actually, a lot of MVPs get hired by Salesforce. It's almost, the joke is that the MVP is basically a talent pool for Salesforce to kind of hire people from. And lots of people like Jess Payne, who was like a guru of Pardot and did loads of Pardot videos and training and stuff like that, and now is working for Salesforce in, you know, doing Pardot. And yeah, it's you're doing it for the love of it. You're doing it to support people. You're doing it to learn more about each other and bringing other areas into the platform and different techs and stuff like that, maybe. But yeah, it's at the heart of it. You want to learn and you want to help.
Got it.
Is that rubbish? Okay. Or is that rubbish?
No, not at all. No, that's exactly what one needs to do. I mean, so the thing is, I think there are 4 things that matters. Number 1, you're learning constantly. Number 2, you're like spreading that knowledge that you're gaining. Number 3, you're actually giving back to the. I mean, it's again either you're giving back the knowledge that you have got, or you're just creating some kind of event or something like that, which actually helps a lot of people come to us, like onto the same table and share their experiences, which helps them to grow and stuff like that. So there are different initiatives that you can take, which helps people at the end of the day.
And I think there's there are other programs. There's not just the MVP program. There's like the Champions program, I think, is still around, and other things as well. So
Marketing Cloud Champion, and
So it's not, you know, just about, you know, MVP, I suppose, as well. So, you know.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. So next question is, would you recommend Salesforce admins? I think I kind of know the answer already, but I still want to hear it from you. Would you recommend Salesforce admins and consultants to choose the architect track? And if yes, then why?
Absolutely. And I think it's because it's a differentiator. It's if you look at all the certifications and all the people out there, there's a lot of people as admins, there's a lot of people as consultants, there's a lot of, you know, and if you really, and even when I started, when I was doing, you know, being a desktop and support engineer, you got these, you know, tech goes in waves, essentially, and you're getting loads more admins coming in. You're getting loads more consultants coming into the platform, which is not a bad thing. It just means, if money is your objective, or if working for a big consultancy or whatever is an objective of yours, then, taking the less trodden route is going to be harder, but potentially more beneficial for you in the long run. So yeah, absolutely. And also just don't be scared of it as well. I think for me as well, I always thought of the CTA as obviously the pinnacle, the hardest thing in the world. And that all the architect certifications below that were equally as impossible, to do. And I actually didn't do them thinking, oh, they're just too hard. Even though I've been working in the industry for like 10 years or whatever it was up to that point. And then I took the first one and I'm like, oh, actually, these are not too bad. Next one. I think I did like 7 or 8 in however many, 6, 7 of them, or most of them in about a month. But then that's because I've got a lot of experience in the platform already. But yeah, I think, again, what makes you stick out? Architect certs, or everybody else has got, app builder and stuff like that. And they understand big data. They've worked on a project with big data. Yeah, okay, this all makes sense. And then also you're getting those better opportunities because, this is as me as an architect, a big global project, big data is involved. Have you got big data experience? Well, you might not have big data experience, but you got big data certification. Great. Or large data volumes certification. Great. I'm going to bring you onto my team. So at least I know you've got the theory, I suppose.
Got it. Perfect. And one more thing that I was that I have one more question that I have for you after hearing what you says about going for the architect route is people think that becoming a technical architect is all about going for the CTA certification. How much of that do you think is right? And if yes, then please elaborate. And if no, then please elaborate.
Yeah, personally, I've toyed with, because I'm not a CTO myself, but I've worked with CTAs all, day in, day out. And for me, I think the CTA certification has changed over the years, I suppose, and is very Salesforce centric. For me, the value is the enterprise architecture, knowing the tools in my toolbox across the globe that could support that Salesforce implementation. So CTA is very valuable for consultancies. So if you want to go work for a consultancy, head for your CTA and get as many certifications as you can, because they love certifications because it improves their partner stats. But for me, wanting to give value for these companies I'm working for, then I want to be learning, Snowflake, AWS, those multi-cloud architectures, understanding how Salesforce fits in a multi-cloud architecture and where I can kind of use elements of AWS or Azure and how it all fits together in a jigsaw puzzle, because that's what businesses are using. They're not just using everything Salesforce. And so the CTA is very much, everything Salesforce to a point, which is fine. It's good, but stepping back, looking at enterprise architecture view, I want to know everything else outside, because that's what you're going to be connecting Salesforce up to and offloading compute to different things and data and stuff like that. So, hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
In a roundabout way.
It does. Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay. I think I asked this question earlier, but let's go with the next one. How much do you think your personal brand has contributed to your success?
So that's an interesting question, because actually I would say not a lot at all in some ways, but that was my historic brand, I suppose, because in the UK, nobody knew Salesforce. It was always, the company's just bought it. and didn't know anything else except for talking to the salesperson, I suppose. And at the time, yeah, if I literally, I wouldn't be able to step off the plane at Dreamforce without somebody coming up to me and going, "Oh, I follow you on Twitter," and all this kind of stuff. And being well known, I suppose, at Dreamforce-ish. But then in the UK and my business, not as well known, and didn't work for me. This is historically as well. But now, as everybody's a lot more connected and a lot more looking for experts in the field and knowing, hey, I want an architect that's really good at this, or I want somebody that's brilliant at marketing cloud, then it's becoming more of a thing. And also consultancies wanting to get those people that are great at self-promotion, I suppose, that they can also kind of promote their brand if they're working at that consultancy. So I think it's becoming more important, especially now when we're in this kind of environment where you can work from anywhere, a lot more so, and companies realize that actually that does work. And so now you can bring these experts into your project just to do something, and then off they go again. So I do work where it's literally, for me, it's just maybe half a day's work. But it's just reviewing that architectural design for this big implementation that's happening, to make sure they're using the right products in the right way. And for them, that's a massive value. But yeah, it's highly priced as well. I get, so for doing that. So if you can get into that space and you've got your personal brand of being that guru, that expert, whatever it is in that piece of tech in Salesforce, it might be the business side of how you connect things together with the business. It could be understanding the Salesforce value chain and how everything you can add value, and actually don't focus on this stuff, focus on how you're interacting with your customer is like the key, because I think of Salesforce as that customer experience engine, really, not a CRM. It's how you communicate and record all those interactions. Then make yourself that brand of that understanding, and so you can find your niche. You'll, I think, definitely definitely more important in today's world.
I'm a little surprised in here. I mean, I thought that your personal brand has contributed a lot for you, but yeah,
I think, to be honest, like the most hilarious thing I ever had was I got a job. I was in a meeting room, and somebody was saying, "Oh yeah, we were just at Dreamforce and we saw this great talk, which was 10 things that it was the Apex 10 commandments, yeah, and 10 things you shouldn't do within your Salesforce org." And we realized we were doing all of them, and I wondered if you could help us out. Did you see that talk? And I was like, yeah, I presented that talk. And they're like, "Oh, really?" And so, yeah, well, that worked well, didn't it?
Very famous, actually. The 10 Apex commandments is they're very famous, actually.
Yeah,
people have talked about it.
Yeah, and it's been translated into Spanish, and there's been other 10 commandments for other things, and yeah, it is on like the architecture site forever. As one of those things to learn, but yeah, and I think it is. For me, it's the value I found it for the personal brand is connecting with all those like-minded people and knowing who to go to. So for me, that was the value of my personal brand, because I knew people that were the guru, like Jess, the guru of Pardot, the guru that were in the community that had that also brand, and I knew I could reach out to them and get them to help on problems and things that I was having, or at least point me in the right direction. And so being known in the community, then they were a lot more likely to pick up the phone or reply to an email than maybe I would be if I was not known at all. So for me, that was kind of the value I think I I had over the years of my brand, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Tell me a little bit about your love for theaters. Did you always wanted to be into in theaters since your childhood, or that was something that you
No,
figured out, or that was just a side hustle or hobby that you had?
no. So I think it was basically I was a bit of a crazy kid, and
How were you as a kid, by the way?
crazy, mental. Um, yeah, I was utterly mental, and so yeah, running around all over the place, breaking things. Yeah, utterly mental kid, hitting people, crazy. And so my parents were like, "How do we get them out of the house?" And so one of the things was like, somebody said, "Well, why don't you take him to a theatre group or something, so he can, maybe that will help." And so I kind of started kind of like a drama group that kind of closed down, and I started doing this theatre group at a local theatre. And then I kind of carried on, really. And a lot of my friends kind of have gone into the theatre industry or haven't. Like there's BBC sound engineers, friends of mine, and all this kind of stuff, which kind of got me into kind of Harry Potter and Love Actually and all the kind of films I've done over the year, back then as well. But also I think it was really great because in IT, in Salesforce, you've got to be creative. There's a million different ways of doing the same thing. So for me, it was great for
That
improving
helped
my performance, being confident on the
creativity, the
screen.
presentation
Yeah,
skills.
exactly. All of that. So no, it was really good.
Yeah. So so you never really wanted to be into theaters, right? That's what you're saying.
So actually, I do remember the time when I had to make the decision. And that was in the UK, we have GCSEs, which is kind of school certification or exams. Then we've got A-levels when you're about 17, 18 or something like that, or 16, 17. And I was choosing what A-levels to do. And I had the choice of either going the theatre route, drama route, or the IT route. And for what I picked, and I decided to go the IT route because there was more money in it. And that was it, really. But I carried on doing it on the side, basically, doing shows, doing,
You've done almost like 15
backstage.
shows or something like that, even more than that, I guess. 15 to 20
hundreds.
Shows, yeah. Hundreds?
I've done theatre shows, loads. So I'm probably doing 3 a year from
That's
when
amazing.
I was probably about 7, 8 every year. Yeah, until probably at least.
Now I can figure out why do you want freedom out of your job.
But yeah, it's that kind of thing. It's like, you're free to
do whatever you want to do.
Find your dreams. Yeah, find your dreams. Find the thing you want to do. And even like, I always think Salesforce is such a great way of getting into different industries because it's not just about learning Salesforce and getting into the tech industry. It's also finding an industry you love. And so many industries use Salesforce, and it's a great door opener to get into a different industry or a different way to find, actually, I love film post-production, or I love media, or I love, whatever it is, you could, with that, that experience of Salesforce, you can get into those industries, and maybe that takes you away from Salesforce into something else, that you love doing. But it's that great way of, giving you the skills to be able to go into different industries with the technology.
One of your skill that I'm really in awe of is your content creation skills. They are amazing. You edit videos like anything. They're so engaging. You do not create much of a content as far as I know. Yeah, you create only a couple of videos in a year, but those videos are perfectly edited. Every moment is captured the way it should be. So you've got that director mindset.
Yeah, I think that just comes from the theatre and and actually it really helps me I do quite a lot of, so when I'm working, so a client I'm working with at the moment, I do release videos essentially for them. but also it's a kind of, the creativity, I think, is only going to become more and more important when, the key thing for Salesforce is getting user adoption. How do you make it fun? How do you get that engagement so they understand what's in it for me? So being able to create a, in a short message, put that across to a user so they get it is, I think, it's an art form in itself, I suppose. And being able to do that is really important. That kind of bleeds into tech as well, and being creative and being able to make creative decisions on which path you take based on not really knowing what the future is, but knowing that, this is the best way of going based on the current understanding. So yeah,
it is. Did you got the chance to see Salesforce Plus?
Yeah, I did. I was,
the quality of the content is
I'm sure
like,
it's
tell me.
Yeah, so I've only watched a couple of things, and I think initially it was because they just recorded a load of webinars basically and put them on, and I think as they get better, it'll improve. But things like, there was one series I was watching, and you couldn't forward wind it or jump forwards or speed the video up. And at the beginning of every single video in the series, they had the same chunk of video, basically
the logo opener, the same logo opener.
Yeah, but it wasn't even that. It was somebody talking about what this series was all about. And I'm like, I've already watched that in the previous video. Why are you saying this again? And it was like 5 minutes of waiting for them to stop. And you couldn't forward wind it. And it's like, come on. I've seen this in every other video. I've got to wait for it to finish. And so, yeah, I think it'll get better, or from what I saw from there. But yeah, I think it's a great concept though.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, a platform for business. It's a bit like the CNN of a business platform to communicate best practice and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, how it evolves.
Why don't you collaborate with them?
Time. No, yeah. Okay. Actually, to be honest, yeah, it wasn't with Salesforce Plus. There's some other project that we were kind of working on, which I just didn't have time for. But yeah, maybe I should reach out to them. Say, hi, how you doing?
So they reached you out for Salesforce Plus?
No, it wasn't Salesforce Plus. It was another project, but I just didn't have time to do. So, but yeah,
just be a beta user for them.
But I think that also that's the view. Do they go the approach for Salesforce Plus on actually syndicating content out? Because a lot of the value of the community is where you're breaking out of that community, you're understanding how people work in different ways and bringing that into the Salesforce world. And that's what I love. Like London's Calling, always make sure that our keynote speaker now is never anything to do with Salesforce, because we want to bring that outside thinking into the community, so you can think differently and not get stuck in this bubble of Salesforce, I suppose.
Got it. Perfectly got it. Okay, so one last question for you. What is the one myth that you want to debunk about our industry?
One thing.
One myth.
About. Oh, one myth. Sorry.
One myth, yeah. One myth that you want to debunk about our industry.
Good question. It's not all about sales. I think. Oh, it depends. A myth from somebody new coming into the industry, or a myth for somebody already in it?
For both.
Okay, so I think a myth of people newly coming into Salesforce, and Salesforce has worked over the years to try and break this, but everybody thinking it's just a sales platform. It's sales. It's a sales management tool. You can build something, but essentially the root is sales. But actually, it's an entire platform ecosystem of apps and agility to build your business on. And it's not just about sales or service or marketing. So I think that's one of the myths. And also you can be very agile at business change in it. And then myths for people.
For the one who's already, who have been in business.
It's not all about Salesforce. I think it's probably the thing. Look outside, look at different ways of working, break out and learn outside of Trailhead and things like this are the ways of working, because otherwise you're stuck in the bubble learning everything, the same thing that everybody else is learning. And yeah, great, but for me that's not adding value to the community, to the Salesforce ecosystem.
Got it. But the experience that they've got in their previous job definitely helps in that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah. But then when you're stuck in it and you've been working in it for 5 years or whatever, you're kind of
So what should they do? What's your suggestion for them? What should they do?
Keep on learning, whatever it is, on the platform or off the platform, in different ways of working, looking at take an AWS search, or look at different, if you're a developer, actually, can I develop this somewhere else? And what are the benefits of doing it? Don't tell Salesforce. But, it's that kind of hybrid way of working, because companies don't just look at just having Salesforce. They've got other technology there. So when it comes to,
they want to be agnostic to it.
Yeah, and they are agnostic to it. It's potentially a new thing coming in. So when they say, well, actually, especially as an architect, you got a transition plan, it's maybe things you can't immediately bring into Salesforce yet, because it's just not ready within the rest of the organization. So how do you transition it in slowly? Well, the only way to do that is to know what that tooling or that system is in more detail. So yeah, just keep learning, really.
Got it. Okay, so that's all from my end, Francis. It was really amazing to talk to you after such a long time, and thanks a lot for coming on the show. Yeah,
it's been really great. Thank you so much for having me.